Hello and welcome to the catch-up for May 2024. I'm Paul from Give and Toke.
And I'm Christina from AusCannaReviews.
And we come together each month to explore what's happening in cannabis in Australia and around the world. Now you can get in touch with us by emailing giveandtoke@gmail.com
or AusCannaReviews@gmail.com.
And you can also follow the links in the show notes to find out more about the work we do when we're not doing this show. Christina, what's new for you this month?
I am working on something that I wish I could say more about, but I can't say anything.
Dropping spicy little clues there. It's like, yeah, I'm working on something, but I'm not telling you.
Exactly. I should have thought that one out a little bit more. But I'm really excited about what I'm working on, and hopefully all my ducks will be in a row. So that way, when we meet again in a month, I can kind of give you guys some more details. Just know that this collaboration is something that when I announce it, if it does come to what's the word?
Fruition.
There you go. That's the word. You'll be like, oh man, that so makes sense. I totally understand. And yippee, I can't wait to tell you about it.
Awesome. Well, no, there's nothing wrong with dropping breadcrumbs. I dropped some breadcrumbs last month, and I'm excited to announce that giveandtoke.com.au is now live. We've now got our accessories for sale. Incredible smell-absorbing bag that's lockable, that's stylish, that's discreet, that's elegant, and also a rolling tray that has a magnetic lid so you can keep your stash safe. And I'm also excited to say that in addition to the launch sale that we've got going on at the moment where you can save a bit of money, there's also an exclusive deal for catch-up listeners. If you use the code CATCHUP, all one word, CATCHUP, at checkout, you'll get an additional $4.20 off the already discounted launch price. So please go check out giveandtoke.com.au if you are in the need of some stylish accessories, whether you're traveling with them, whether you're using them at home. There's my little plug for something I'm very excited about.
I'm excited about it because I have to own up. I don't have a travel accessory that I put my stuff in. I don't know. I don't have anything. And so because obviously I knew you were doing this. So I'm very excited about it. And I'm not going to lie. I'm going to drop my little catch-up code in there and I'm totally going to get one. And then I'm going to shamelessly promote it because I'm excited about it.
Hell yeah.
Seriously, I don't have one. And I'm like, what the fuck? I don't understand how I don't have one. All these years, how do I not back that up? Celestial Seasonings tin, Altoid tin.
Whatever works. Whatever works.
You know, in San Antonio, when I was growing up, like no word of a lie, there was a store and it was called Planet K, and that was like your head stop, right? And then, so anyways, I went in with my little Celestial Seasonings tin, 16, 17, and no word, put it down on the counter, looked Buddy in the eye and was like, everything must fit in the tin.
It's got to be portable. That's the whole point of these bags. They are a little bit bigger than a tin, but you've got to be portable with your stash.
You do. For sure. And, yours is very schwank with its lock, because I'll tell you right now, there were plenty of times I dropped that Celestial Seasoning and it opened and I was like, ooh, oopsie.
Well, a magnetic lid on the tray, a lock on the bag should be keeping that stash safe. So all those people every other day on Reddit that go, how do I travel with my weed? Visit giveandtoke.com.au to find out just how you can do that in style. So, Christina, let's start with current affairs. Our first story for this month is hundreds of marijuana supporters attended picnic rally, 36 arrested at Melbourne Park. So this comes from news.com.au, and basically 36 people were arrested at Melbourne's Flagstaff Gardens at 4:20. Victoria Police sent about 80 police officers, sniffer dogs, and had mobile processing facilities in response to an event that had, maybe 300 people at it. So we're not going to spend too long on this because this is a story that's been out, for a month now. But I just want to say, as someone who attended it, it was absolutely outrageous to see such an intense police presence for something that is a peaceful protest. 7-8 years ago, thousands of people were there smoking cannabis freely with members of parliament. And now that we actually have a legalized cannabis party with seats in Victoria, we're seeing a greater police response.
I do feel like it's overkill, right? When you show up with sniffer dogs and a heavy police presence, when I'm going to make a bold assumption that the vast majority of the people that were there respectfully and had their medication in their labeled tubs and were consuming responsibly. And so for you to show up with especially sniffer dogs, I think that's the one that really kind of upsets me the most, is that time and time again, sniffer dogs give false positives all the time. And for you to show up at an event where's the good faith? Where's the good faith that the people that are there are responsible individuals and that they're consuming in a responsible fashion? You didn't give anybody the benefit of the doubt. And I'm with you, Paul. Things like this set us back and don't bring us forward.
Yeah, a bit of an unhappy 420 for me, bit of a shame, but onwards and upwards. So our next story, and this pertains to something we've covered before, it was a bit of a watch this space, and that is the NRL Dolphins have agreed to remove medicinal cannabis clinic branding from NRL games. So the Dolphins have worked with the TGA, agreeing to remove Alternaleaf branding from its jerseys and on signage and materials visible to the public. Thoughts on this one, Christina?
So when you read in it, like the TGA doesn't say that you can't have these partnerships, right? Like you can still have this partnership. So it makes me wonder, had Alternaleaf not been so ballsy and put it literally on the chest, so that way it was front and center for everything. If they had been a little bit more low key and maybe stitched it at the bottom of the collar, or maybe very casually on the short, small, and it was low key, would we even be talking about it? Would it still be there? Would it have caused the uproar that it did? I think the only reason we're talking about it and TGA so quickly jumped on it was because, yeah, it was front and center and it was shameless.
Yeah, and they've said that it actually has nothing to do with their ongoing case against Alternaleaf and Montu pertaining to their breaches of advertising standards in other areas. So I think what we're seeing is that classic kind of disruptor model. You know, it comes a lot from Silicon Valley. Uber did it in basically every market they entered. They enter a market, they break the rules, they push the boundaries in hope for change. Now, I think Alternaleaf knew exactly what they were doing when they started this. Their lawyers aren't idiots. The Dolphins lawyers aren't idiots. They knew that they were going to create some buzz with this. And, as we said a month or two back, watch this space, because we didn't think it was going to last, and proof is in the pudding. It hasn't.
Yeah. And, it was good publicity because, that whole classic, any publicity is still good publicity. And here we are months later, still talking about it. Right. So I think you're right. The lawyers absolutely knew what they were doing. And this was a calculated risk.
Definitely, definitely. Well, our next story, again, is a bit of another, part two to something we've covered before, and that is a rubber band snapping back. Thailand's cannabis U-turn, a return to political middle ground, says observers. So according to Channel News Asia, in a move to deter recreational use, the Public Health Ministry is planning to put cannabis back on the Category 5 narcotics list, but to classify it as a soft drug, under which its production, import, export, and use will be regulated by the ministry. So the Thai PM has said that he intends to return cannabis to the narcotics list by the end of this year. They're wanting to combat foreign investment, and they want to placate conservative voters. Now, I would encourage the people of Thailand to be outraged by this, and the business owners who have invested their time and money into this, because like here, we're going to see bad actors. We've got cowboys here affecting the industry, but you also have a bunch of people putting their livelihoods into this. And it is really disappointing to see a coalition government that is relying on, I think, about 17 or 18 parties to come together, be this steadfast about cannabis. And I say, as long as alcohol is legal in Thailand, these decision makers are cowards.
Like, to me, it's really weird, right? Because you do like what you're saying, right? They have all of these businesses and people that invested in something that was legal. They jumped through the hoops, they went through the processes, they opened up businesses, and some of those businesses are doing very, very well. And now all of a sudden the government is like, oh, we're just going to rip the carpet out from underneath you. Sorry, get over it, find a new job.
Yeah.
That's fucked, to be honest.
Amen.
Like, especially since, again, all of these people and all these livelihoods, they went into this with good faith and they followed the rules and they did what was required. I mean, yes, look, governments are free to change, their laws when parties come in and out and blah, blah, blah. That's fine. But I feel like this is a real knee-jerk reaction. This is you're not really thinking about the fallout of all of these businesses and all of these people that you're taking their livelihood. And I'm sure Thailand is going through a cost of living crisis like we are here in Australia. So you're literally taking food and shelter away from people who, again, invested in something that was approved by the government and jumped through the hoops and did, they crossed their T's and dotted their I's.
It's so frustrating when you look at politics because so often things move slowly. But I think cannabis in Thailand is proof of how quickly things can move. It was very quickly legalized, and it looks like they're rather quickly going to pull it back. And so you can kind of see when politicians are motivated, they can actually get things done a lot quicker. So while, we do have to accept the slow wheels of politics, it clearly shows that when people want to make decisions that they can. It's just a shame that it was one knee-jerk reaction one way, and now it's another one back the other way. And so it's kind of one step forward, two steps back. But we continue to watch this space because who knows what this is really going to look like? Who knows what this government's going to be able to achieve in the next 6 months? There's so much posturing. There's so many announcements on Twitter rather than, actual professional public announcements. So time will tell. But I would strongly encourage anyone who has not yet visited Thailand that wants to enjoy the fun that it can be in an adult use market, head over there as soon as you can because things might look different by the end of the year.
Agreed.
Our next story claims cannabis suppliers are paying Aussie doctors to prescribe their products to patients. So this one comes from Channel 9 and the incredibly trustworthy source, A Current Affair. So doctors specializing in medicinal cannabis are being paid by suppliers to prescribe their products to patients. A year-long investigation by A Current Affair has uncovered. Sydney GP Yan Ren, who runs the Flowers of Life clinic, admitted to being paid by a cannabis supplier for prescriptions she wrote for the company's product. So this is a bit of a spicy story, but not necessarily a super surprising one.
I kind of feel like, yeah, hi, it's obvious, especially if you're at a clinic that only prescribes certain brands. Like, why would they only prescribe certain brands? There has to be a reason behind that. Honestly, if you went to a doctor and you said that you needed, I don't know, Viagra, and they told you, well, I'm sorry, we don't stock Viagra because of ethical issues with the blue dye they use or whatever bullshit they tell you, would you stay there? No, you would go to another clinic that when you went to that other clinic and you were like, hey, I'm looking for Viagra, they'd be like, yeah, sure, here you go. Like, let's sort you out. They would give you access to whatever you needed for whatever, health condition you're trying to treat. And so again, big red flag. If you're with a clinic that doesn't give you access to all of the products, there is a high chance that that clinic is getting some sort of kickback.
And we've covered this before, like people need to know what the interests are of the doctors and the clinics they go to. There's nothing wrong with a clinic being aligned with a brand if that interest is detailed, but too many doctors are not saying that. And, I think it's clear we in the know already know this. I think for a year-long investigation, this is pretty toothless, to be honest. I don't think this is the smoking gun that ACA thought it was. But in an update to the story, Dr. Ren has been suspended by New South Wales Health pending an investigation, and it is alleged that Cannatrek, a company whose revenue has doubled in the last year, have been potentially paying hundreds of thousands of dollars. So look, the only thing that these guys have broken is a code of ethics, which is not laws. But unfortunately, where this leaves the responsibility is on the patient. We need to know what our clinic's investments are and interests are, and we've got to do that research. So stick with a clinic that is honest with you, that is open and upfront, that is clear with you. If they don't prescribe a product, ask them why. Why don't you prescribe that? Is it because you've got kickbacks from another company, or you just don't believe in that product? Because there's good reasons sometimes why a flower might not be prescribed. But I'm glad it's being highlighted so we know it's an issue. I'm just not sure that this investigation has done anything to improve the situation.
I gotta agree. I mean, again, for something that was a year long, you got one doctor, big whoop. Again, why wouldn't a clinic prescribe you any medication that was out there if you could present a reason as to why you wanted to have it? There has to be a reason why they're like, no, I'm only going to give you product X, product Y, or product Z. There's a reason there, and that reason is kickbacks.
And any clinic that is linked to a dispensary or forces you to use a particular dispensary, just ask those questions why. Because I use a doctor that is linked to a specific dispensary, yet I am allowed to take my scripts and go wherever I would like based on the best deals and the best availability for me. And that's great patient care. So there are clinics out there that have linked dispensaries and you can go off and do your own thing. And there's others that aren't. Just got to find what works for you.
There's a happy medium.
So our final story is Victorian Treasurer commits $5.2 million to cannabis driving trial in the state budget. So according to Cannabis, after knocking back legalised cannabis Victoria's amendment to the Road Safety Act in March last year, the Victorian government have allocated funding for a trial. Now, I've got to say, this trial has been done before. We've seen these results, and $5.2 million, as much as I hate to say it, in a cost of living crisis, is not a lot of money for something like this. So the trial is budgeted for 2025-26, so we're still a long way off getting these results. And honestly, I'm just really disappointed. You know, this is not an encouraging sign that the government have announced this. They are kicking the can down the road. They have delayed what we already know, and that is medical patients should not be discriminated against at roadside drug tests. Impairment ends after about 4 hours, 8 hours if you want to be safe. So honestly, we've talked about this one to death. We bring it up again because of the announcement, but God, this is just frustrating for every Australian except for Tasmanians.
Yeah, like I'm glad that we're doing it. Yes, it's a step forward. Yes, it needs to be done. But why can't we just get started? Like, what's the actual holdup? And not only that, though, there are studies out there that have already been done. So I understand we need to do it here under our rules and blah, 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 blah. But again, why would you not just start on something that basically you're just confirming what other studies have already proven?
It's incredibly cowardly. I've used that word about, Thai governmental officials before, and I'll use it for our own. Like, I'm a supporter of this Victorian government to an extent, to the point that, we don't have a competent opposition that presents a better alternative. So, I understand that, we're stuck with these guys and let's work with them. But it is frustrating to see a government that has had power for so long, has such terrible opposition, such poor opposition, continue to refuse to lead the way in any of these things. We have a Premier who has admitted to cannabis use. Now, she has admitted to breaking the law, and I'm being facetious here, but she should step down from her job. If cannabis users are being arrested in gardens, if roadside drug tests are putting people, getting people to lose their license for 6 months, destroying families, destroying livelihoods, she should step down. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to be an absolute wanker when I say that, but how can you admit to using this drug and saying, hey, it's fine, and then not doing anything about improving the way that people use it? This government continues to ignore sensible drug policy, and it's very tiring.
Agreed.
Well, that's about it for the current affairs for this month. As always, there are incredibly controversial topics, there are spicy topics, there are things that grab our attention. And of course, please get in touch with us if there's something you want us to talk about.
So we're going to shift on over to hot tokes. Paul, do you have something that you want to get off your chest this month?
I do. And I think it comes, it stems a little bit from my frustration with, maybe quote unquote the cannabis community. And I want to say this. I'm tired of seeing big pharma identified as an enemy of the cannabis community. And the reason is because I don't think big pharma actually exists in this space. I think it's a really lazy, broad brushstroke to go, oh, it's big pharma. I think what people actually mean is corporate cannabis, and that's an entirely different thing. Now, it's okay to not be okay with corporate cannabis because you're entitled to an opinion, but whether people like it or not, I think corporate cannabis is a part of the future of legalization. And I want to be able to grow my own plants. I want to be able to share with my friends. I want to have that freedom, but I also want people who won't grow their own cannabis in their backyard to be able to go to a store and buy something. So my major point is this. The biggest enemy of cannabis legalization in Australia is conservatism. It's not pharmaceutical companies. Conservative politicians like Michaelia Cash, Georgie Crozier, they focus on the wrong things. They make broad brushstrokes about drug users. There are organisations who have made it their mission to prevent sensible drug reform in Australia. The Delgado Institute, they rely on the teachings of someone who died in 1878. And Drug Free Australia, whose patron is Margaret Court, who is 81 years old, the founder of Victory Life Church, and, she has most sensible Australians regretting naming a tennis court after her, because this is a person who believes that people in same-sex relationships have had their minds taken by the devil, and that anti-bullying programs in schools are akin to communism. So these are the people leading the charge in, stopping us from making progress. These are the organizations that slide in and have influence and have say. So just want to say this. Anyone who's out there blaming Big Pharma, look at who the actual enemies of cannabis are. And in Australia, that is conservative attitudes around your dinner table and in politics.
Is my mic gonna pick that up, that clapping?
Thank you.
I'm
Yes,
gonna say
for the
it did.
listener, Christina is applauding me. Yes, yeah.
There you go. You can add it in later with better
40
sound
people have just
waves.
stormed into my room and now they're carrying me down the street as a hero of legalization.
Woo, woo. People can visualize it now. Visualize it. I love it.
I just think like there are genuine organizations to blame. There are genuine people to blame. And I think when you talk about big pharma, it's a really easy throwaway blame. Yes, pharmaceutical companies are to blame for a lot of wrong in this world. You know, the opioid crisis is a big one, but they're not our big enemy in legalization right now.
I agree with you. 100%, man. 100%. 100%.
Well, that was my soapbox rather than my hot toke. Christina, do you have a hot toke for this month?
So my hot toke is not more, it's more ooh, caliente hot as opposed to like I'm standing on my soapbox. I want to say preaching because I agree with everything that you just said. Mine's more of, I guess, like I said, more of a ooh, excitement, caliente. I'm kind of excited about this, and it would be the fact that the Justice Department in the States has formally moved to reclassify cannabis as a less dangerous drug in a historic shift from a Schedule 1, which means there's no good, highly addictive, horrible stuff, down to a Schedule 3, which basically says we now acknowledge there is medicinal value there. So that's caliente. That's muy caliente. That's awesome. That's great because that is, whether we want to accept it or own it or anything like that, we here in Australia follow behind in the States very closely. And so if the States can push this through, they can reclassify it. That's a huge step and a big green light to the rest of the world, right? I also have to stress just because they're reclassifying it does not mean that it is federally legal. They haven't legalized it. All they are doing is reclassifying it, which I must stress is huge to do.
It is a big move and it's really exciting to see. And, you know, maybe it's become my running theme for the episode, but I've seen a lot of criticism of this move because it's not enough. I think that's one of those times where whatever that saying is, you know, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. This is a huge move. You know, change is incremental. We need to see pardons. We need to see support for these changes. And ultimately, we need to see legalization, decriminalization, all those things. But this is a huge step in the right direction. You know, America is very volatile politically. And, you know, another one of those organizations I saw was quoted in this Associated Press article, and that is Smarter Access to Marijuana. You dig in deep into those guys, they are just an anti-cannabis organization disguised as, you know, a healthcare organization, and they actually heavily influence New Zealand's referendum. So any criticism you see of this, you got to take with a grain of salt and know that this is an exciting thing. We want some pardons, we want more progress, but this is a really great thing to see.
Yeah, it's huge. It is. It's huge, right? Because again, the states kind of led that whole thing with prohibition and weight, and then again, Reefer Madness and the movies that came out and all of that. And so for them to step up and say, okay, this plant does have some medicinal value. We can acknowledge that. And that's caliente.
Whether we like it or not, we follow the states in a lot of things. We follow them down the prohibition route, as you mentioned, so maybe we can follow them down the route of going a little bit easier on cannabis. So very exciting. It is open for consultation at the moment, so there is obviously a lot of discussion and unfortunately objection to it, but we'll see what comes next. So very exciting. So Christina, as we head to the tail end of the show, regular listeners know that both you and I do work individually in the cannabis space. What should followers of AusCannaReviews expect from you this month?
Well, let's see. We just did Spritzer, Craft Botanic Spritzer review. I've got Patch Therapeutics Jack of Hearts review coming up. I also, Brittany's Frozen Lemons from Chemovar, which, God, can I just say, three scripts I have had written to get this tub into my hands because it kept selling out and then they had some issues and blah, blah, blah. But I finally got my hands on some. So a review for that is coming up soon. So yeah, lots of good stuff. Oh, and next month is CBC for our cannabinoid of the month.
Always great reading on your Substack, Christina. AusCannaReviews.substack.com. Make sure you sign up. Make sure you are subscribed, because that's a really awesome resource if you are a cannabis patient in Australia.
Paul, what is going on with Give and Toke this month?
Yeah, I've had a couple of really good episodes come out recently. I had Jason Gann of Wilfred fame on the show recently, where I got to fanboy out, for probably the first 20 minutes of the episode about my love for the TV show Wilfred, before we eventually got into his run for politics for legalized cannabis Queensland, as well as Wilfred cannabis brand that he sells in the States and is hoping to bring here. And I've also got an episode with New South Wales Member of Parliament Jeremy Buckingham. So we obviously talk about all sorts of things like prohibition in New South Wales, his kind of tough on crime approach that he's taking to cannabis, and we have a bit of fun with the quiz. And of course, just another little plug for giveandtoke.com.au. Those accessories are out now. Use the code CATCHUP for $4.20 off.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. You know what I totally forgot to shamelessly plug? I actually had Genevieve Newton, who is the head grower of Stewart Farms, on my podcast. So she talks about Brittany's frozen lemons, and she drops a pretty big bomb about it at the end of the podcast. So, maybe you guys should tune into that if you want an inside scoop on that bomb.
Right on. And not to be tokenistic, this is an important part of the cannabis industry. It's awesome to hear more stories of impressive women in this space. So yeah, absolutely killer.
Yeah, she's like you were talking about fanboying out. I totally fangirled out when I reached out to her to be like, hey, do you want to come on? And she was like, yeah, I'd love to. I was like, oh my God, she said yes. I was like Rocky at like the top of the stairs dancing. I was like, oh my God, she's gonna talk to me.
Right on. Yeah. It's such a good feeling. I think one of the best things about doing a podcast is, the connections that we make and the people we get to speak to, and the kind of quick relationship building that spending an hour on a podcast with someone does. So yeah, it's a real privilege to do this, and we meet some really special people. So definitely an episode worth checking out.
And I can't wait, because check out my stories on Instagram, because I'm going to get a little travel bag, and I'm going to have to travel somewhere with my Give and Toke travel bag. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going somewhere with it. So
right on.
All right, so that's it for this month. You can find me at AusCannaReviews on all sorts of platforms: Instagram, X, Substack, all that delicious stuff.
You can also find me at giveandtoke.com.au and at giveandtoke on Instagram.
Be sure to subscribe, give us a 5-star rating or a review, and of course, we love it when you tell a friend and share the show. I'm Christina.
And I'm Paul.
Thanks for listening.